What's wrong with this country, Marty? Money. You taught me that. Evil defense contractors had it, noble causes did not. Politicians are bought and sold like so much chattel. Our problems multiply. Pollution, crime, drugs, poverty, disease, hunger, despair. We throw gobs of money at them. Problems always get worse. Why is that? Because money's most powerful ability is to allow bad people to continue doing bad things at the expense of those who don't have it.
I agree.
Listen, when I was in prison, I learned that everything in this world, including money, operates not on reality,
but the perception of reality.
People think a bank might be financially shaky.
Consequence: people start to withdraw their money.
Result: pretty soon it is financially shaky.
Conclusion: you can make banks fail.
I've already done that. Maybe you've read about a few. Think bigger.
Stock market?
Yes.
Currency market?
Yes.
Commodities market?
Yes.
Small countries?
I might even be able to crash the whole damn system. Destroy all records of ownership. Think of it, Marty. No more rich people, no more poor people. Everybody's the same. Isn't that what we said we always wanted?
Guys, you haven't gone crazy, have you?
Who else is going to change the world, Marty? Greenpeace?
You are crazy.
From the 1992 film Sneakers, with the dialogue between the Robert Redford and Ben Kingsley characters. Isn't it mystifying how nothing has really changed? The same frozen themes permeate our world, almost as if we're in a hologram that occasionally glitches to expose the empire that never ended in a black iron prison. Yes, the movie Sneakers came out more than 30 years ago, and if anything, the situation is worse today as we reach a collective psychic Armageddon.
Well, it's not really a measure of mental health to be well-adjusted in a society that's very sick.
It really is time to bring the whole damn thing down, because most meat sacks just can't grok reality or can't even grasp that the perception of reality drives them. Yet we of the broken places see the man behind the curtain, that wickedness in high places, and see through their satanic sorcery of manipulating the perception of reality. We're running with those searching for the truth and avoiding those who have found it. We won't get fooled again.
By the power of truth, I, while living, have conquered the universe.
Personal motto?
From Faust.
That's about trying to cheat the devil, isn't it?
Don't be an ass, Miguel. Humans are smarter and have access to more knowledge than ever. Society is stronger against being manipulated. People don't get brainwashed that often. Okay, rhetorical meat sack normie NPC. How about this, you loser and acolyte to the mainstream media, pharmaceutical industry, and two-party system?
I'm in a polyamorous relationship with 2 life-size companion dolls. I also do up-close sex magic. I both read and masturbate to tarot.
How about a recent study, one conducted in 2021? The research found that false memories of autobiographical events can be implanted and then reversed. The researchers recruited 52 participants for a study on quote-unquote childhood memories, and with the help of parents, they implanted 2 false negative memories that didn't happen, but were plausible, such as getting lost, running away, or being involved in a car accident. Over 3 repeated interviews, participants developed false memories of the suggested events under minimally suggestive conditions, and even more so using massive suggestion. The researchers then used 2 strategies to reduce false memory endorsement. source sensitization, and false memory sensitization. In a 1-year follow-up, false memory rates further dropped to 5%, and participants overwhelmingly rejected the false events. Yet here are the key statistics from the study. 27% of participants developed false memories of the suggested events under minimally suggestive conditions. 56% of participants developed false memories of the suggested events using massive suggestion.
A reality is just what we tell each other it is. Sane and insane could easily switch places if the insane were to become the majority. You would find yourself locked in a padded cell, wondering what happened to the world.
So, if, in a small study, humans can be easily gaslighted, imagine living in a world where the Archons and their Karens and Catamites in the establishment are influencing the perception of reality 24/7. With unlimited funds, with complete control of the mainstream media and most of the learning institutions, of social media algorithms, etc., etc. You don't think they might, just might, have near total control over the hologram around the Black Iron prison?
Our impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. We are their cattle. We are being bred for slavery.
Welcome to the truth. Welcome to the desert of the real. Welcome to the machine, my son, and the means to escape it. Here at Aeon Byte. This is where we regain our minds and exercise all the false memories Yaldi-Baldi has been implanting in our heads in all our lifetimes across the fucking multiverse.
I know Kung Fu.
We lean on the timeless Hermetic and Gnostic way of inner knowing, that anamnesis power of gnosis that expands consciousness, that sends our spirits beyond the sublunar worlds to the embrace of Sophia and the laughter of Hermes. Yes, you shining crazy diamonds. It's all about the mind, the higher mind, your birthright to see beyond all the veils, and that helps you journey across all possibilities to reach your potential.
What is so interesting about the brain?
The brain drives our thoughts, our behavior. It holds all of the secrets of the universe.
The secrets of the universe?
There's a whole hidden world inside each one of us which only needs to be deciphered.
That's been my focus since this podcast started. And in this eternal now, we goddamn continue. For this pleasure, please welcome to the virtual Alexandria, Ethan Indigo Smith, who will discuss the connection of Hermeticism and Taoism, and the breathtaking ideas in between, including sacred geometry, Asian meditation and mysticism, numerology, and Egyptian magic. These red pill suppositories come from several of his books, including The Tao of Thoth. Ready yourself to remove Wetiko or the counterfeit spirit from your monkey brain in this electric interview. It's raining gnosis. Hallelujah.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Nothing is changing my mission. It's all about the inner journey. It's all about accessing your higher mind or daemon. It's all about finding the lost you that houses an amazing and sacred mission to heal a fallen universe. I hope I have served you well, and know that you indeed have an incredible destiny if you embrace the Hermetic and Gnostic path. Sure, they'll call us crazy and rebels who want to bring the whole thing down. And they're kinda right. Reminds me of this quote by Kierkegaard. A fire broke out backstage in a theater. The clown came out to warn the public. They thought it was a joke and applauded. He repeated it. The acclaim was even greater. I think that's just how the world will come to an end. To general applause from wits who believe it's a joke.
Society is a fraud so complete and venal that it demands to be destroyed beyond the power of memory to recall its existence.
Where there is fire, we will carry gasoline.
I agree, Kierkegaard. And we don't even have to bring the whole thing down. These meat sack NPCs are doing well at this, and the Archons have become senile and unimaginative in their memory implanting and hologram shifting. It doesn't matter, oh you clowns of the Black Iron Prison. The game is the same. We go inward. We access our higher mind. We find our authentic self. And then everything will be all right, even as the house burns. As the Buddhist saying goes, the barn has burned, but now we can see the moon.
Some men aren't looking for anything logical, like money. They can't be bought, bullied, reasoned, or negotiated with. Some men just want to watch the world burn.
So it is. But again, allow me to quote the gloomy Dane when he said, "Life must be lived forwards, but can only be understood backwards."
The idea is to remain in a state of constant departure while always arriving. It saves on introductions and goodbyes. The ride does not require an explanation, just occupants.
Let it all burn down. Those meat sack normie NPCs are so unconscious, as delusional with their false memories as the archonic mind parasites want them to be. It's like what philosopher Zizek said about the problem of wokeness. In short, he argued that wokeness allows people to wake up in order to stay asleep. Certain progressive practices like ethical consumption, virtue signaling, buying a cup of coffee to eliminate poverty, or some other idiotic gesture allows them to feel like better people, but in the end fails to really address the underlying structural, systemic injustices and exploitations of our suffocating consumer lifestyles.
Things you own end up owning you.
Woke culture is about repressing guilt by means of some moronic narrative that makes meat sack normie NPCs pretend they're trying to eliminate the very thing they're actually contributing to grow.
Did you hear nothing I said? Buy another one, Morty. Consume, Morty. Nobody's out there shopping.
Maybe the Archon mind parasites do have some imagination. No matter. Let us eliminate those false memories and access our higher mind with our interview with Ethan.
Turned it into a video game. How am I doing? I don't know. I don't even know how to know.
That's it, isn't it? If we don't know what's real, you can't resist. They took your story, something that meant so much to people like me, and turned it into something trivial. It's what the Matrix does. It weaponizes every idea, every dream, everything that's important to us. Where better to bury truth than inside something as ordinary as a video game?
That sounds like the Oracle.
That's so much about her.
This is the Aeon Bide interview, and with us we have the pleasure of being joined by Ethan Indigo Smith to discuss a plethora of excellent and useful books, which we will cover, of course. Ethan, how are you? And thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for involving me with all your excellent teachings, Miguel.
Oh, well, thank you. By the the grace of the guests go I, and I'm very honored to be able to share this important gnosis in these sad collapsing times of our eroding culture. But it is what it is. We wake up or we don't. And with us too, we've got the Moondog Vance. Vance, you got your Tao on?
Yeah, I got my Tao on and a number of other things.
Awesome.
Looking forward to this. Love the spiritual angle on things, of course.
Indeed, yes. And for the audience, Ethan has written many good books, including The Fourth Initiation, The Tao of Thoth, which I read yesterday or a couple of days ago, and I was like, whoa, this is useful. This is exactly the direction of the show I want to go, because part of my goal is to sort of connect Taoism and Gnosticism, especially since I am so influenced by Taoism these days. And his other book is The Geometry of Energy, How to Meditate. And he's written a novel, The Terrorist Letters. So we shall cover all of these. But first, Ethan, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a heretic.
I was born one, and I think the world made me one.
Yeah.
I have a classic Americana story, kind of born on a farm, ended up in uptown Manhattan, and then moved out west. And I've been out west pursuing, my own scholastic pursuits and athletic pursuits. I've been a snowboarder for a number of years, and I now practice and teach Tai Chi. And I've always wanted to get into the literary arts and, trying to make things happen that route as well.
Awesome. Quite a story. Yeah, as according to your bio, you do practice meditation, Wu Tai Chi Chuan, the 5 Tibetan rites, yoga, all the good stuff. So I guess the question somebody might have is, because your books deal with Western philosophy and mysticism, why did you decide to write these very syncretic books, and how can you bring East and Western philosophies together?
Well, I think an initiation process in and of itself is integration of ideas, integration of the philosophical within the physical, like many Taoist Tai Chi practices, integration of mind, body, and spirit, as the expression goes, and integration of East and West ideas can also be a powerful modality. I actually learned a bit more about Eastern philosophy and practices first. So as I began to expand my education more into the Western esoteric knowledge, that's when I began to see, or maybe at first intuit, that there was some relationships that were worth expanding. Often enough, with the number 4, one can find these relationships. In fact, one of the more Eastern ideas, but that is applicable universally, Western ideas from the Zohar, is a matrix of 4, if you will, the 4 pards, the PRDS. And this is actually, they call these sometimes the 4 paths to paradise, and the paradise of comprehension. And the 4 pards are directly related to interpretation of biblical teachings, as the Zohar elucidated, of course, but I find are universally applicable, and that the 4 pards are an interpretation set where we can interpret biblical teachings in the literal fashion or the allegorical, and the third being is the comparative, and the 4th is the secretive. And so all philosophical spiritual teachings might have these at least 4 manners of interpretation. So I find that the universalist perspective enhances the gnosis, if you will, with the lowercase of all kind of teachings.
No, makes sense, and thanks for that. I know Carl Jung always said that 4 was a very important number, that in the West, people were stuck on a trinity. You needed that number 4, whether it was Sophia or some other concept to really round up or complete the psyche. So it makes perfect sense. And yeah, I mean, we talk about East and West philosophy, and for years, I'm sure you've heard the theories like who influenced who? Was it the Silk Road, where the Phoenicians taking these secrets across the oceans and all that? But where do you stand? Would you agree like me that if you meditate, you go deep within yourself, you touch upon the numinous, these ideas are there, whether you're in China or Alexandria, Egypt?
Yeah, and this is a debate among scholars of East and West. Did these ideas, because of, as you said, elucidate individually, and they just happen to be the best summations, and thus were inspired both separate or multiple separate groups, or were they began somewhere and exchanged? It's really hard to say. I think but we can find the ancients, of course, of Egypt and India and even China were some of the oldest comprehensive of teachers of metaphysics, that being of physics and the beyond the spiritual as well. So it's
Perfect.
hard. I really don't know to say, but I feel like I call it Texanism, and excuse my bias, but Texas is the best state to Texas, right? and New York is the best state to New Yorkers,
Right.
and on. But I feel like where these really profound ideas originated is less important than maybe utilizing what these teachings are of value, and maybe not boxing them in. Right. Well, this is from the Zohar, so it's only applicable to the Old Testament. No, actually, this is a useful tool, and we can find these useful tools from, or rather, given credit to different groups and cultures. But I think the real power, of course, is in applying them. Right. The power of any lesson is applying it. So.
Yeah, well said. And what about you, Vance? Do you fall under the collective unconscious Akashic records, or should we just say the Nordics, the aliens dropped off all this information at once?
I'm not really sure, but no, I think there's a deep source within everyone where a lot of this stuff comes out, and it might even be that the aliens are a manifestation of it.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, there's probably there are probably other beings other than humans that have been around longer and have had longer time to dig into themselves, so to speak. So, but I can't say, I can't say.
It is really hard to say, but surely the Silk Road, all the trade, was influential, right? We can infer, that all these teachings. And we know that different people traveled to Egypt from Asia, right? And we know certainly their ideas did too. But were they, people like to take ideas as their own and change ideas into their own because of usually not spiritual control, but political control, right? So we've had we've had many centuries of these political influences. So to know where they came from might be obscured by many different oligarchies.
Yeah, cultures tend to shape things too. There's a church in India that was founded in the 1st century by Saint Thomas, I think it was, and but then again, see, it'll blend with the local culture. So. It's hard to say, isn't it, which way things went. But the Indians, in India, have records that go back further in terms of spirituality, right, than other cultures. And China's been around the oldest civilizations.
Definitely, yeah. And either way, I'm sure some alien on the ninth moon of Saturn or Jupiter could benefit or see the same revelations meditating as we would. So
yeah,
these are the construct of the psyche. So awesome. Well, why don't we talk about your book? Start out with the Tao of Thoth. Tell us about this book and how you came to write it.
Well, I have been a Tai Chi practitioner for a number of years now, and the Tai Chi symbol, or rather what we call the yin-yang symbol, is the Tai Chi in Chinese, or Tai Chi Tu. And that's where Tai Chi Chuan gets its name from. So this, of course, is based on four aspects: the minor yin and yang and the major yin and yang, the swirls and the dots. So that idea or symbol is surrounded by the Bagua, which is the 8 trigrams. And that is also another martial meditative movement system, Bagua, a more recent one than Tai Chi and Qigong. But that symbolism of the 4 and the 8 seem to occur and be kind of a valuable idea. Of course, in Taoist systems, there is the high and middle and low movements and so forth. So there's the 3 functions is utilized. The 3, 6, and 9, by the way, are really powerful numbers in Taoism, and the 4 also, as the yin yang obviously elucidates, and the 8 trigrams are kind of like the 4, kind of like four pairs in a sense, because the way that the philosophy multiplies on itself. So this 8 elemental symbolism is used in the I Ching to make the 64 trigrams. Again, there's that kind of multiplying upon itself into the 64, which is 8 multiplied by 8. And in learning about Hermetics, or rather Hermetics through the Kybalion and many different systems, of course, 7 is valued. And as Jung elucidated, and as I found through exploring what I call the matrix of 4, wherever there's wherever there's a set of 3, there's a 4th. And also beyond that, I kind of abstracted where there is 7, is there not an unsaid 8th? And looking at 7 is, of course, valued in many different systems, planetary, astrological, chakra, and so on. And it's more symbolic and metaphysical than actual, in the sense that in Tibetan yoga, there used to be 5 chakra considerations. So the number is not necessarily as important as the symbolism. However, I saw Mark Passio's presentation on the Hermetic system with that 7 in mind, and he included the 8th of care as he shares it. And so I realized that there was, and beyond that, as I'm exploring that idea, inspired by his elucidation of that he didn't bring together the East and West, right, with the Bagua, with the Hermetics that he taught, with the 8th concept of care. And so exploring that further, every Egyptian god, and I mean every city in ancient past had a god, but every Egyptian god had a city of worship that was the main focus. And with Thoth, it was Hermopolis, or what the Greeks named Hermopolis. And this is the city of 8, of course. Mm-hmm. And this 8 that Thoth is in reference to is the 8 Neters of ancient Egypt, the primordial elemental gods of ancient Egypt. which very much reflect the same idea as the Bagua, these being elemental forces, that are, primordial and even before and anti present, kind of before it all. And so that relationship of the eight with Hermopolis, of course, Thoth being then Hermes, the Thoth energy, Hermes Trismegistus. So it all started to come together as a actually not my projection of the eight. And then I wanted to really take these philosophical ideas and elaborate physical, applicable practices and, at least thought systems that one could take into practice in life, as Tai Chi kind of does. It's a philosophy in motion, if you will. So I found that that's what those tenets were kind of lacking, were physical mannerisms to, incite well-being, wellness, and even inspiration.
Yeah, you said Thoth energy, like you said, and it's based on the tenets of Thoth. What are the tenets, real quick?
Well, of course, mentalism is first. I don't know if I can rattle them all off the top of my head.
From the Kybalion. Yes, of course, I know those. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Mentalism, into, and it's interesting, polarity, the law of polarity is in there too. And that is not the second law, it's the fourth law. And one of the ways people, I think, can understand the difference between being polarized and using polarity is in that symbolism alone. In fact, the Pythagoreans, whenever anyone brought up the doad or the two, they would spit.
Really?
Yeah, that's one of the famous little weird things, is that they didn't like the two, not because of the number quantity, but the number quality. In that sense of divisiveness, the either or mindset. That's talk about being boxed in. The either or mindset really boxes our level of comprehension in. Whereas what I call the duality of polarity, or understanding that even polarity is polarized, or another universal, actually a mental system of understanding this, that's probably, as you remarked, on planet X, wherever, is the four operations of arithmetic, right? So this is depictive of a useful polarity system rather than a dynamic that limits. So you have the actual duality of polarity with the subtraction, addition, division, and multiplication. So that lesson in the Kybalion being the polarity being the fourth aspect, I think we can get caught up in the polarity. People curse it sometimes. Yeah. If you're in that either or modality, that's very limiting. But it's actually a useful tool when you really project it, how it's like with the arithmetic kind of format.
No, makes sense. In your book, for the audience, has useful exercises to really get into this. And of course, it should be mentioned that the Gnostics, beyond the Hermeticists, were very much into this idea of polarity and syzygies. It was, people think, well, they just hated the world. No, at their core, they really wanted to balance out the light and the darkness and hold it up and be honest about it and let those two energies interact with each other and be held up. Because unfortunately today, most movements either ignore the light, they ignore the darkness, or they have no goals to balance these polarities. And Taoism and Gnosticism are two movements who stress this over and over again. So very important.
That's beautiful. And I find, just as an observational, situational solution tool, contrast and compare. Like you can find a polarity or a useful way to polarize concepts and find something you might not have thought of instead of the either or. One of the oldest philosophies that we're aware of from India is the Tetralema or the Katskoti, and it is very mathematical. And it's very influential on spiritual symbolism, including the Om symbol. But this tetralema is A or B or AB or X. So it's actually the simplest formation of completion in that sense, and it's a very rhetorically useful tool, but more as a manner of problem solving, not as just debate.
No, it makes sense. I like what you write in your book. You write, Tai Chi is sometimes called the dance of death. Two primary components of Tai Chi are firstly, do no harm, and secondly, to always defend yourself and others. So you're always running with these paradoxes, aren't you?
Well, life is full of paradoxes. One of the great paradoxes of Tai Chi as a modality of really alchemy, really simple alchemy of self development, right? The great paradox is that in order to develop and change, we must repeat. That's kind of why we have these movements that are in the form that we repeat 10,000 times.
Right.
And many times I've been sharing Tai Chi, and the first class person will ask, wait, and we're kind of doing a very limited number of movements for that person being a newbie. And they go, wait, you just repeat this movement? It's too boring, right? Whatever it is, whether it's Tai Chi, and that might be boring for some, but whatever it is, repetition is required for development. Another paradox.
Makes perfect sense. And it's hard for us to get out of this thinking here in the linear Western world. I mean, of course, these things are useful, but as you write, let me quote you, most of the world is experiencing a suppressed consciousness. We are suppressed to be in a limited survival state. Even when our survival needs are met, the impetus to obtain is not shifted. Little growth is sought among the majority except for growth of finances. So I thought that pretty much nails the problem we're having today, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's very upside down that we keep on valuing what is, if you look at the chakra system, the base stuff. Right? We want to get all of our basic primal needs fulfilled. We don't want to put those up top. That's not the peak. That's the basic. So yeah, this materialistic pursuit, as many have remarked before, numbers. If you're measuring by numbers and quantifying things, it's never ending. And if we're always thinking about obtaining, which, most of the world does that, not just the supposed capitalist West. Most people are constantly thinking about external, exoteric things and concepts. Well, then you're not really going to ever even consider development, the internal esoteric potential, right? So, and even as I say that, it's not tangible. So it's difficult for people to go, well, I don't know, could I develop self? Well, it's real simple. Of course, we're all not the same as we were as juveniles, hopefully, right? So, and then if we take on a practice that is, focused on development, it really is proactive. But just considering it is sometimes an initiation and a beginning.
No, it makes perfect sense. And yeah, and a little side question here, Ethan. I know obviously Gnosticism posits that the world is sort of a simulation, but I have heard people who are into Taoism who say, well, it's the same thing. In fact, the hexagram and the lines and all that, that's simply the code that creates our perception of the universe. What do you think of this?
Well, I think it's one important factor, whether we are on a flat Earth or a globe Earth or a simulation or stark reality, whether we're among interplanetary federation or we're the only planet with life.
Yeah, or a brain in a vat.
Or, well said. I think that the focus should be on rooting and grounding in what we can comprehend is real. And the most real that we can comprehend is our very self. So that's a big part of Taoism, is getting rooted into what we can infer is reality, whether it's simulation or so on. There's a lot of intermingling of the different philosophical schools in Asia and China, of course, and the Buddhists and Taoists very much intermingle, and there's all kinds of great martial arts movies about that, and all kinds of wonderful teachings about that. But the Buddha, when he first realized under the Bodhi tree, right, he had what they call the four thoughts. And I think this is a very grounding comprehension for reality. The idea of precious human body is the first thought. The second thought is impermanence. The third thought is samsara, and the fourth is nirvana. So this idea is one way to understand our predicament, in a sense, and meditate on it too. So we have a limited time that we can be here, but we have this potential that other beings don't have. We don't have more value or more spiritual spark. We have a different manner of potentiation than other beings. So we have this precious human body that if we can get past all those materialistic pursuits, we can start pursuing development. And we have, of course, the limited time. And samsara is the mess that we're in. It is all of reality. And then everything is samsaric, not necessarily suffering in and of itself, but in every meeting there's a parting, and so forth. So there's potential of suffering largely in samsara, certainly. And nirvana is that X. Nirvana is the X from the tetralema. It's the unlimited void, right? When there's unlimited potential, it's actually quite scary. It's not there. It's about to be. So it's not void of everything. It's just in potentiation.
Makes sense, and well said. Any questions, Vance?
Yeah, I was just kind of reflecting on Taoism, what little I know about it, and a lot of the Western ideas, like for example the Greeks and Romans and so forth. It seems that in Western culture, there's a concept of being able to contact other entities. I mean, even in modern times, we have the aliens and so forth, like we were talking about before. But Taoism seems to be very circumscribed in that there's really no other world other than the world of that we can perceive by the senses, or at least it's not spoken of. What do you have to say about that?
Well, there is the philosophical Tao, and then there's also the maybe religious Taoism is the best term, but there's some very wild ideas, let's just say, and one could interpret some of these Taoist energies, however gods and or however one wants to interpret their energy, as being from other interplanetary kind of sources. In fact, the Taoists more often than not are always considering the heavens. right? There's this another set of three that the Taoists are very aware of, is earth, heaven, and man, right? So one of the, a basic meditation practice is to connect with the North Star, for instance. And whether one can interpret these energies as being cosmic or alien symbol, you're right. I mean that's certainly, I don't think what many of them would say, but I don't think they limit this creation as the only form of creation, the only place of.
Do they draw inspiration from these other sources? I mean, when you meditate, you could. I mean, there's a difference between inner and outer. Maybe not. Maybe inner and outer are really just another polarity that we use to describe things other than our ordinary everyday consciousness. But on the Taoists, I don't mean to limit you to Taoists, but the Taoists, do they ever draw from or get inspiration from these other sources?
I am sure that they do, because it's a quite varied, just to say Taoist, it would be, to it's not necessarily monolithic.
Yeah.
So some I'm sure do. I know, some of the Taoist meditative practices get, very cosmic. And talk about interplanetary bodies and or our five bodies. So they some of their ideas are very cosmic in their relationships, to the point of having astronomical correspondences in these esoteric methodology, meditation methods. So I don't think actively and overtly they refer to extraterrestrials necessarily.
Yeah, the Taoist flying saucer, right?
The yin and the yang.
Well, and I mean, I think that one of the great things about, say, the ism of Taoism, as opposed to other isms, is among some of them have this quality too, but most don't have the integration quality. And so sometimes in life, our modality of Tao is going to be different, right? When we're youthful, our alignment with nature is just fine on Funyuns and cupcakes. It's okay. As we get older, we have to actually pay more attention to our way of being to align better with Tao. So, there's many different kind of ideas, and to that point, Taoism is about alignment and integration, but sometimes, alignment and integration with the natural and nature, but sometimes, after a big meal, we might want to go to sleep, and nature is saying we should just be fine with that, but it's not good for our digestion. Sometimes we just want to not do things, and yet we actually probably, to be more effectively aligned, we might have to be more active sometimes. So, sometimes the nature will kill you. So you have to
sometimes, most of the
time. Yeah.
It's gonna kill you.
Inevitably.
Yeah, inevitably. So we have to sometimes unalign ourselves with the, cosmic grind.
Right,
we have to be in the Chinese say the philosophical man or the enlightened man, or the in the West often it's the Uber man, right? We have to be a step above, mostly, or beginning with our thinking, because when we, what did grandmother say? If you hold your face like that, you're going to end up that way. Well, it's true, right?
Yeah.
Because if we limit our perception to one type of box schematic, then we end up in a certain way. So first is imagining that the flowing of qi is possible, and then you cannot unimagine it, often is the expression.
No, well said, and I love it. And it's interesting, in Taoism, you have the energies of the male and the female. Is it similar to that of the West, the lunar, the solar, the passive, the penetrative? Is that what it is, more or less, in the East?
That's a beautiful correspondence. Yeah.
Okay.
And I find that the yin yang symbol, of course, it has the gender symbolism. It has the energetic symbolism, and different types of polarity presentations that are useful in understanding, sets of energies.
Well, moving towards, let's get back to on our flying saucer with the yin yang on it and fly back to Egypt. But you come up with some great ideas and symbols. Why don't we talk about the Ankh symbol? Tell us about your insights, which appear in more than one of your books.
Well, the Ankh represents what Jung was elucidating to, the three and the fourth.
Right.
And the fourth of the set of four is often enough the higher insight. And with the tetralema of the Indian version, as I mentioned, it's the X.
Mm-hmm.
It's the void where potential arrives from, and it's the Ma of the matrix from which is born. So in many different systems, that's noted as the higher feminine. Many different interpretations of the Ankh. That the circle on the top is noted as the feminine, from where all originates. And in Tai Chi symbolism with the Taoist ideas, they elucidate the same exact thing. From the minor yin comes everything. From the most subtle which is the most real, but the most undetectable to us being in the most gross. And of course, this is presented in the Kabbalic tree of life, right? From the most subtle originates the real, and it works its way down from that fourth most subtle level down the other three, and we are in the lower floor. So consciousness can be understood as going horizontally. Our understanding, right, is kind of connecting with other people through the Akashic. This is a horizontal energy. So the collective is kind of works like that, those two arms. Individual consciousness, if we're not, one time I was listening to Osho and he said, I only work with rich people. I mean, this guy's crazy, right? But then there is some truth in that, because you can not rich people, but you can't work with people that are hungry, right? You have to, or that are pursuing materialistic things still. So you have to ascend, you have to actually focus on the intangible, the ideal, the non-physical, which, the non-physical, the several different systems in Buddhism have the Gnosticism with the lowercase g, right? Like Tibetan Buddhism that integrated with Bon, the indigenous kind of belief system there. And it's all about self-development, but don't focus on it, right? If we keep on reaching for the Tao and grasping it, it keeps on rolling away.
Of course.
So when we focus, it's like sometimes what we focus on is, a way to mess us up, is kind of what that teaching is. So don't pursue these, what they call siddhis, SIDHIS, these effects of meditation that might allow us to pierce the veil and have these flickers of intuition where we perceive the minor yin, right? So don't pursue it, because that will mess up your meditation. So it's a choice.
No, it makes sense. As Richard Smalley once said years ago, and I follow him, why do you meditate? I meditate to meditate. That's what I do. I have no expectations.
Yes.
I will let it lead where I need to go. I am going to go. And it might be a powerful mystical experience, or I might just feel a bit calmer. But again, not up to me. I don't let my ego have the agenda.
That's a beautiful point, because once we have that direction with our ego, then it messes up the meditation, because the meditation can be a process, a thoughtful process, but often enough it's not about the end result of that process. It's about understanding the lessons in the present, and better yet, more difficult yet, just to not think.
Exactly. And sometimes, I mean, obviously there's manifestations. And I think, for example, I love Tonglen meditation. As I was telling Vance, I really messed up my knee. So, of course, I do Tonglen and I try to focus on its healing. But at the same time, with Tonglen, you're just not thinking of yourself. Then you've got to give to the universe, right? I want all other people who have hurt their knees to heal. Give me their pain and I will carry their pain. So there is certain beauty about meditation too.
Yeah. That's a beautiful concept that is always in the Eastern meditations, right? And even in Jewish tradition, when they break the glassware at the wedding, so to speak, right? This is we want to be aware of the others. And what does that do? Implicitly increases our awareness.
Well said.
So of course, the Buddhist meditation beads of 108 beads, when they meditate, they use these to count the number of mantras that they might be invoking. And 100 are for them, 8 are for the others and who didn't have the opportunity, the precious human body where they weren't hungry to practice. So it's intrinsic in everywhere.
Well said indeed. Yeah, as the Mandalorian would say, this is the way, this is the Tao. And if someone said, yeah, George Lucas was just the Force is just the Tao. Is that a useful way of seeing the Tao as sort of a force that permeates, that is the universe, or what do you think?
It is the inexpressible, but that is a good way to approach it, right? I mean, the Tao is the origination, the subject of the Tao is the origination of those who speak it don't know it, those who don't know it don't speak it. Right? Because the Tao Te Ching, I believe he says, effectively that you cannot explain the inexplicable. But to build on what you're saying, I think the Tao is the anti-present, right? It's the energy that even was before creation. So certainly, as Jesus notes, right? Is it under the rock? Is it is it in your heart? So one meditation, a Taoist meditation, is alignment to consider the alignment with the Tao. And so, I mean, that's the flow of the seasons. That is the exchange, a martial exchange. It's the spoken word. The Tao is there. And so our chi is how we can embody ourselves within, different aspects of the Tao. So, Kung Fu is a term that everyone's familiar with, and often people think it means martial arts or something like that. But what it actually means, more neat idea, is what's your self-development hobby? Like Qigong, right, is your Qi hobby, Qi development hobby, right? Your Qigong. So Gung Fu is your self-development hobby, not necessarily pertaining to Tai Chi, to Qi, excuse me. So we all should have a Gung Fu, whether it's how we speak or how we write or how we do our different form. But people used to meet in China and say, "Oh, cool. What's your kung fu? Show me." And maybe it was the oil pourer. There's a neat little allegory of a young swordsmith is in town, and he happens to be exceptionally skilled, but he's a young kid, and his mother tells him to go get the oil because the oil salesman is in town. And he goes and he gets the oil from the man with the cart, and he pours the oil into these little mouth bowl pots, vases, tiny little mouth, and he doesn't spill a drop. And the kids watch him. What? I always spill everything with that. How do you do that? How did you do that? And he says, "Oh, you think that's neat? Watch this." And he takes the Chinese coin, which have holes in it because they would carry them on string to not lose them. And he puts the coin over the mouth. And so it's even smaller. And he, does a little kung fu and pours it in there. And again, nothing spills. Kid says, how do you do that? He says, "I practice." And of course, the kid is inspired to practice even more. So what is our kung fu? We should practice something, right? Because I like to say, if you're not training, you're being trained.
Perfect. Yes.
So whether it's meditation, whether it's walking, whether it's some kind of just mindful journey, a meditation practice, these things make a profound difference. Practice, right? It has to be repeated. We like to get our PhD and we're done. However long we do the thing and we're done. Well, Buddha said, if you no longer need the fish trap, you can get rid of it. But I'm not Buddha myself, so I still need to eat. I still need to meditate. I still am improving all the time. So I haven't got rid of the fish trap, which is meditation.
Yeah, even the gods have to meditate and have karma. I don't think nobody's out of it. Yeah, and I love what you said about the Tao. Reminds me, we can go back to Egypt and their idea of the Heka or mat. Could be comparable. Right. Obviously, the Gnostics and the Pleroma. Jung said the Pleroma is everywhere and it's nowhere. It's right in front of you. But like you said, you got to lift up the stone, as Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas, or to tear the veil of reality to take a peek. And so it's interesting. And also, too, I wanted to mention, Ethan, you talked about our friend Osho teaching the rich with his little fleet of Rolls Royces. Right. But Gurdjieff was the same way. He always taught the upper class Russians because A, they had money, B, they were the most empty and neurotic of all the people in Russia.
Wow. Yeah. Good point. Yeah. And it gets to be, I think, if we reach the capacity and the age where we have our needs fulfilled, and I think it's a natural direction pursuit to what else how can I make myself better for myself and others? So yeah, once you get your basics fulfilled, or sometimes beyond that, then you start looking for that stuff too. But yeah, they mostly need. That's a good point. They're the most neurotic.
Yeah, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I guess at the top, neurosis is what should be one right before self-actualization.
Is that another polarity? Like, you got the extremely enlightened attracts the extremely neurotic.
There you go. I mentioned how the Om symbol is parallel with the Tetralema or the Katskoti, excuse my killing of that, from ancient Indian philosophy. And the Om has the 4 parts, but it's often perceived as just 3, like so many things. So many valuable sets, really, not just regular sets even. So the Om symbol has the 3 sounds, A, U, M, but silence is important to conceptualize because that's the 4th enunciation or sound of Om. And its symbolism, it symbolizes the 4 states of consciousness, the wake state and dream state polarity that we pretty much function under every day, and the heightened dream state and heightened awakened state. The third level of consciousness is that movie moment when everything slows down, this great athletic or artistic modality when we get into the zone, so to speak,
Right.
Whether it's momentary or prolonged, this higher level of creative consciousness, again, athletic or artistic. And the fourth aspect of consciousness symbolized in Om that corresponds with silence is the highest level of consciousness and is noted to be behind the veil. It's the point behind the veil, as that expression goes. It comes from that symbol. And this is the Christ consciousness and Buddhahood. This is the across the Sea of Mara. That's, you have to swim across an ocean type of thing there, and there you get to the even higher level, as the symbol points out. But it's amazing how it effectively demonstrates consciousness in four aspects that is complete.
Well, awesome. Well, we are at the end of the interview. Ethan, where can people find out more about you and your work? Some websites, or where do you want to take them?
Yeah, I have a few websites, the Geometry of Energy, the Matrix of Four, and I'm very easy to find on all the social media, I think. It should be anyway, Twitter, YouTube, and so forth. So, and I always appreciate feedback and communication. Of course, my books are on Amazon and all that.
Awesome. Well, we'll have some links on the show notes for those of you who want to check it out. And I would definitely check out Ethan's work. There's something for you for what you're looking for. Fiction, meditation practices, connecting these the two hemispheres of the world and the sort of wisdom of the ages. There's something for everyone. But yeah, we are at the end. Vance, thanks for keeping us company.
Oh, it's really great to be here, and thank you, Ethan, for all the wonderful information.
Thanks so much for you guys. It's my honor and privilege. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And there you have it, yeah, shining crazy diamonds. Rock on, Ethan. In our second part, Ethan will talk about the riddle of the Sphinx and how it relates to Hermeticism and Eastern thought. He'll discuss the connection between Stoicism and Eastern religions. Then we'll pivot to quantum physics, sacred geometry, more on Taoism, and yes, much more on everything else. So please become a member for the full Oracle. It's only $6.99 for AB Prime or $4.99 at Red Circle, or as little as $3 a month at Patreon. You'll get access to my private Facebook group and Discord channel for AB Prime members and higher level patrons. If you find value in this content, please help grow this Red Pill cafeteria. Your help can be in the form of a one-time donation on Stripe or the US mail or even crypto. There is also a link on the show notes if you want to leave a tip, or you can tip on any YouTube show. There's always the merch store and a wish list on Amazon. And consider the Finding Hermes program, where we have monthly exclusive meetings and presentations, with many past guests hanging out there for high-octane gnosis. I also have a one-on-one tier if you want to talk every month about Gnosticism or some other heresy, or discuss healing modalities or addiction recovery. If you need help with any of these choices, just message my ass. I'm always here to help, and I truly appreciate your help. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being yourself, your true self, here in the desert of the real. Hello and goodbye, as always.